We're back for another Teach Me Outbound with Liv from Konquest. If you want to do a very quick intro of who you are and what Konquest do, and then we could get into it.
Yeah, of course. My name is Olivia Reger, and I am the first SDR for a company called Konquest. Essentially, we are the first and only automated commission platform built exclusively for recruiters. We help in two main ways. We automate all of the team's commissions and get rid of the dreaded Excel spreadsheets. But then also we put someone's biggest incentive, which is commission, at the forefront of the company, which naturally creates performance and team morale. So yeah, we do things a little bit different around here.
Amazing. And we'll go more into the prospecting you're doing at
Yeah.
Konquest. But to start with, you've obviously switched over from the automotive industry where you spent most of your career doing quite a different thing to the SDR role. So do you want to start off with how that switch has been and sort of what you were doing before and how you found going into the SDR role in a completely different industry?
Yeah. I mean, I've left a 12-year career to where I started off as a receptionist. Really, I used to greet you when you used to come in. I've worked for Audi, BMW, but my longest stint is with Jaguar Land Rover. So I've always worked in the more prestigious side of things. And yeah, it's a very, very different change. I actually fell into the motor trade. I actually studied childcare. I wanted to be a special needs teacher, and just for a summer job, I needed to sort of waste really 3 months before I started placement. Started working at Bedford Audi as a receptionist, and in hindsight, probably preferred cars over loads of screaming kids, realistically. But then also, I was earning a salary quite early on. So then, when I looked into the actual childcare again, unfortunately, they're not overly paid that well. It was more of a, do I step down from taking quite a significant drop to then working more hours and so on. But yeah, built up a career in Jaguar Land Rover. I actually was one of the first female managers in after sales that they had within group, which was a huge achievement. I think that's what I really wanted to do, purely because the motor trade is a male dominant industry, and realistically, being a female, you really have to prove yourself, which is a really backward thing. But I would have very headstrong, sexist customers. It's where I really had to prove myself. Essentially, I had customers returning back after years. I'm very much of, I'll stand to my own ground. I think I've got a very strong father figure. It's like, Olivia, if you want something, you work for it, but also don't take any crap, as they say. And I was just very probably brutally honest with customers, which I think in hindsight, a lot of people did respect. But yeah, the motor trade was very daunting to leave after I've got a very well established career. But in all fairness, I just kind of found it wasn't what it used to be. It was very different now. A lot of things have changed. You've got all the electric cars. It's not a lot of people now do all the online bookings, online services, and the customer interaction, which I loved, really started to decrease over time. I wouldn't say I was honestly looking. I knew I kind of was like, maybe this is kind of when I need to take a jump. I actually was told, I think I was 18, be careful of the motor trade because once you get in, you can't get out. And I did leave once. And I think it's because it's a second nature. It's one of those things I could just wake up, log on, do my job, and like not even think about it, just naturally do it. So when it came to me actually thinking of, right, and maybe this is the end of my career and to start something else, I looked into ideally the skills, like transferable skills. And in all honesty, it's very, very similar to an SDR. The only thing that's probably different is the cold calling aspect. But in a way, I used to do retention at one point. So I would cold call people and say that maybe their car needed to be changed or like I could get them a better deal. So that's probably the only other thing that was a little bit different. But in regards to skill set, it was very much on par. Very, very good. And all my clients are recruitment. They're all recruitment owners, which are, I think, very, very similar to the motor trade.
Amazing. It's so cool. And you obviously, like I said, built a career up in the motor industry and moved your way up the ranks despite oh, you said the sexism and the issues and everything that was going on. So you've obviously done amazing to do that, and
Yeah.
it's quite cool when you see people go into an SDR role a bit later because it's classed as a bit of a junior role, but there's so much to it, and there's so
Mm.
much. It's only getting harder, right? And they're going to say that in future years there's going to be a lot more experienced SDRs as opposed to an entry role in sales. What do you think was like the main? You sort of mentioned as transferable skills. What do you think were the main ones coming over from the motor industry? Do you think just that being
Um,
able to take confrontation and speak to people at that level and
yeah.
build them
I mean,
relationships?
if there's any Jaguar Land Rover staff out there, we get we used to get abuse. I mean, I probably have been shouted and sworn at every day for the past probably 9 years. Um, so thick skin. um, but also confrontation. In hindsight, somebody just wants to get their point across. So it's very much of just bite the bullet and just listen. And you'll find that as long as you just listened, people's do their attitude and their behavior really just drops within about 10 minutes. So something like that never bothered me. The aspect of picking up the phone and speaking to new people didn't bother me. I mean, I used to meet probably between 50 and 60 people a day. Um, so that's never bothered me. It was more, I loved the aspect of still getting to know somebody, but in a way where essentially we can help. There was a transition of realistically with your car, you needed something from me. Like, no one wants to have a service, no one wants to have an MOT, no one wants me to give them a £400 bill for some tyres. So, but they needed it. So I used to pretty much sell urgency and safety, realistically. Whereas now it's a product where somebody goes, no, we've got that sorted, or yeah, do you know what? This is actually a pain. We have to find a resolution for it. So it's more of it's a choice now rather than like they had to have it. So that's
Yeah, that's interesting. Did
yeah.
it take a while to get used to that change in approach, I guess?
I would say I would have to maybe be a little bit more forceful when it came to the motor trade, because it was like, look, your car's on a ramp. What, I need your answer now. And it's like, if it comes off, mate, it's not going back on for 3 days. Like, you need to tell me now. Whereas now it's more of a come back in 3 months' time, let's have a look at it. Some people are either just doing their financial year or they're going through like some internal changes, which is fine. But then I also did have that back at the trade. I would say, like, realistically, your MOT is not due until September, that's fine. Or your tyres have got like some tread left, that's fine. They don't need replacing until then. So I'd always kind of had a pipeline,
Yeah.
this is very similar. I've always got a pipeline. But yeah, it's a different bit of a change. But in hindsight, our product is amazing. Like, it actually really, really does help. And the people that we've like taken on board already, I mean, we're over 100 customers already. And they can see the benefit in it. And it really actually does make a difference, which is really nice as well, alongside me like learning people and getting to know them and going out networking. And working hybrid. That's bizarre to me. That is so bizarre. I used to do 8 till 6, Monday to Friday, pretty much every Saturday, and sometimes I used to go on a Sunday. So sometimes I'd work 7 days a week. I
You
know.
just listen up every day and every hour, then you
Literally, it got to the point where the cleaners just left me a key because they were like, "Do you want to just lock yourself out when you've gone?" And I'm like, "Yeah, we'll do that."
easier for everyone.
Yeah,
Um, it's quite like a good point to move over now to the amazing team that you have at Conquest, like you said. So it's a very small team, right? And
yeah,
you are the first, the only SDR.
yeah.
What has that been like in terms of building out the role? Because I guess there was no playbook. It's been a constant learning cycle, right?
Yeah, and it honestly is every day. Um, there's literally five of us and we're all completely remote. Um, Carl is the founder and he lives up towards Yorkshire. We've got 2 people in Sunderland and one in like the Isle of Man. So literally, I'm the only STR apart from, realistically, Carl is the other salesperson, but he is the founder and the owner of the company. Um, so it is, you pretty much, I think, they were always completely honest from me on the start. Like, you are the first person. This is kind of where we're starting from. It'll be you, and then like building up and going from there, which also again was very daunting because I've left a huge £1 billion industry and I was one of I think at some point 6,000 staff, where
Yeah.
you don't have to really worry about that because they're big enough and ugly enough to actually afford to have you there. So then going from a small company, I was a bit worried at first, but in anything, it's the complete opposite. I was one of a number where people probably didn't even know how to pronounce my last name properly. And it was the case of they knew my face and, oh, can you go and do this or go and do that? Whereas now we actually are kind of involved in each other's lives. Like we know the other partner's name. Like Carl's just had a baby. Like we've all celebrated that. And it's actually, I don't want to say family because people are like, oh, we're a family. I'm like, red flag. It's more of like we are a network where we actually can rely on each other. It's more of the case of like, could you do this? And it's yes, like we're helpful. What's your opinion on this? And we all have like a huddle or a Slack or like a message and everything. We all just jump in. How can we help? We cover like each other's stuff if we need to. If someone needs a bit of help, they'll put it in the chat. We'll jump on and help. Like it's actually like a community as such. Like we actually generally help, actually genuinely care. So that's a bit different. As much as I'm not going to say, Joe, I didn't care, but you are one of a number, and pretty much you
Yeah.
give your notice in, it's advertised an hour later. Whereas this is completely different. But it's really exciting being a startup, because you can realistically see the future. You can see where it's heading, and that's really exciting to be part of.
Yeah. It's great that you have that close group because you need
Mm,
it, right? If you're building this
yeah.
out your first time in an SDR role and you're building out what that looks like for a company as well at the same time. One thing I really liked when we were speaking before, and obviously Henry was the one who introduced me to you, is the fact that
Mhm.
you've not only got the support network in the company, but you've also made a point of building a relationship with other SDRs so you can knowledge share, so you can bounce ideas off
Yeah.
people. And I think a lot of people are missing that in smaller companies. Obviously, in
Mm.
big companies, you have 20, 30 SDRs you can always speak to and get advice from. But if it's just you, it can become very tricky very quickly. So, what was your advice for how did you actually start doing that? Were you just randomly messaging people? How did you get to a
Um,
point where you built these meaningful relationships with
yeah.
other people?
I mean, realistically, I've always been very intrigued in like social media marketing aspect kind of things. I've always been quite creative. Something like posts and stuff, I was like, oh, I can actually start doing these. There's only so much you can do on like when it comes to the trade. Whereas this, I'm part of building the brand, and I like
Mm,
all like the posts. And in all honesty, my social media, well, LinkedIn, I've created us on TikTok as well. But LinkedIn, my following has nearly tripled since October. I get so many people that message that are other SDRs, and then there's part of like communities, and it's kind of like you've built your own community. But also, I've never really used or stuck at LinkedIn ever in my entire career. It's not that I rely on them, but it's such an easy aspect where you can just message someone and they go, oh, well, actually, I tried this, try that. And I'm like, wow, people are actually really nice. They're really nice. It's got like, and you, honestly, when I say it's a completely different, not just lifestyle change, but complete career change in every aspect possible. Like people that you reach out to them, they actually help you. They want to listen. They're more than happy to give you advice, but also they ask for like advice. It's like, do you think this worked? Just chuck a question out. I really am surprised by how helpful people have been, which has been a really nice eye opener. But in regards to social media, I mean, I post whatever I want. I mean, Konquest know that I'm probably a bit bonkers, which I don't mind. But I think I went to the London Expo in, is it February? And I probably had, probably every 2 minutes, somebody come up to me, oh, you're Liv that works at Konquest. And obviously the founder, Carl, has been doing this for years. He was like, how the hell?
How have you
And
done
I'm like,
this?
and he's like, honestly, you've like really made yourself known. And I was like, I don't know if that's a good thing. Because I probably like posted really wacky, silly stuff. Um, but one of the goals this year is to post every day on LinkedIn, purely just because I want to see the stats. I really do
Mm,
want to see, like, in regards to impressions, engagements, following, what who I interact with, what my ICP have coming up as. I honestly just want to see the stats, really. But then actually looking at all the content, there's some really good people on this network. There really is, that share really, really good tips and tricks. So those you kind of have to take a bit of pinch of salt, because you can't always be like, this person told me, when there's how many billion people in the world. But it's nice to compare them all and take a little bit from each.
Hmm. Yeah, I guess with LinkedIn especially, it's sort of you get what you put in,
Oh,
and you've seen
100%.
that yourself. You've put effort into posting,
Mm,
building relationships with people, and now you're at a point where, like you said, you're getting recognised when you go around. You're sort of building a personal brand to an extent. Obviously, it's quite a
yeah.
relaxed one, and like you don't
Mm,
take yourself too seriously on there. And I assume it's helping with actually booking meetings as well.
mm.
I did want to just go more into your actual outreach strategy and some advice that you have for other people out there. I guess Konquest, again, a small company, they've got a really good reputation in the recruitment space, but also quite small. So I
Mhm.
guess when you're picking up the phone, a lot of people aren't going to recognize the name straight away, right? So when we spoke before, you said that one of the best ways you get out, reach out to people is through when they download one of the playbooks, sort of guides that you've written. Do you want to just explain that in a bit more detail and how you go from someone downloading that to how you reach out to them?
Yeah, of course. So we've got currently 2 free guides. So there's a recruitment commission handbook, which was designed and written, created everything by Carl last year. And that is honestly one of the best guides, especially if you've got like a new starting company. It literally will tell you how to structure like your banding, how you pay somebody when it comes to thresholds and so on. It's amazing. But also recently we've just released a commission census. And realistically, what we find with us as a company is commission is talked, it's spoken about in every single company, and majority of the time, people are paying too much of it, but they've got themselves into a bit of a rut because they've started off small, they've grown big, they're supporting the people that have been there the longest, which is fair. But then companies are chasing their tail when it comes to actually paying out. I mean, commission is a company's second biggest payout following a salary. And it's a very sensitive conversation where it's spoken about but not spoken about out loud. So pretty much nearly majority of every company, especially recruitment that we only deal with, have got this problem. So these free guides really, really help. But it's coming off the back of those. Obviously, if you downloaded it now at 2:34, I'm not going to call you at 2:36 and just be like,
How was it?
"Hi, Joe, how was it?" Obviously, I've got they'll go into a cadence, and then I'll contact them in at least a week's time. Gives them enough time to actually read it realistically, because sometimes people just click on it, go through it, and then they scan on it because they're on their lunch break, and then they'll have to look at a later point. Um, but when I do call those, my question is, "Hi, do you know about Conquest?" It's, was there anything you were comparing it against? Were
Mm,
you comparing it against your own scheme? I had a conversation earlier, and he wasn't management, he was actually just a consultant, and he was like, I actually was comparing it against how I'm paid in regards to a threshold, and he was like, I generally was just curious to see it. Obviously our guide isn't just the bible, like people just don't go off it, but we had over 130 recruitment agencies input the data, so there's a fair bit of information there. And he was just like, I was comparing it and I can actually see I've got this threshold, which realistically isn't the norm. So there's 2 different ways of that. So I'll either call and then just say, because we do an advisory route as well, where we can sit down with companies and help them build their structures, especially if people are paying too much, how to rein it back in a positive way, rather
mm,
than just going, you ain't gonna get paid anymore. Like that doesn't go down well. Um, so we can help realistically companies try and get it back in place in like a different scheme or different bonus. So it's more of those questions. It's of like, how can we help? Like we're happy to give advice. We do advisory routes so people can either sit down with us and we can actually help them. Um, where that then naturally turns into, and I've not even spoken about our product at all.
mm,
And then that's when they go, well, what do you actually do? And I'm like, well, realistically, we do this. However, I know your pain points here at the moment. How can we help that? And then look at the product future or like later on down the line if that'll actually help you. So yeah, it's a warmer lead as such. That's not the cold calling aspect. I mean, I am cold calling him because I've not spoken to him before, but it's a warmer lead as such.
Yeah, nice. And when you're speaking to them people, and like you said, they might be facing this issue now, is a lot of the conversation you have from that sort of you'll get back
Mm.
to them at a later stage, or are you actually booking quite a lot of meetings directly from them initial conversations?
A bit of both, realistically. We are
Yeah.
part of our partners like the RDLC, and you've got Required. Um, we are partners of Bullhorn, Vincere, Mercury, Job Adder, and then you've got the leading pay and bill systems like RSMM Time, Overtime, and Timesheet Portal. So our name is starting to actually get out there, and we're
Mm.
a big, huge red gorilla. So people really notice us, and there are the odd phone call that I've had now, and they're like, "Aren't you that big red gorilla?" And I'm like, yeah, that's my boss. He did that. um, so some people have heard of us, but they don't actually realistically know what we do.
Mm.
And that's when the intrigue starts, and then they want to book in for a demo. Um, I mean, I do discovery calls. That's what I like to call them, purely because I actually discover would they be good as a customer. I'm always very honest with them. So for our kind of guidelines, the base level it always includes the first 5 users. So realistically, if you've got only less than 5 people in the company, an Excel spreadsheet is better for you. It's not hard to manage 2 or 3 people's commissions. But when it gets to more than that, it does become a bit of a more pain problem. You might not have a team leader. How do you put that in an actual structure? So they're the ones that we can help. So if somebody says, well, we've only got 3 in the team, I'm like, that's fine. Here's our free guides at the moment if you haven't already got them. Realistically, I'll speak to you towards the end of the year, see how your year got on, and we'll go from there. But then we have had people there, 35 people in, they're a Bullhorn user, an in-time user, and they go, how do we solve this problem? And I'm like,
Yeah.
well, let's get you in for a little demo. So,
Nice.
yeah.
And another piece of your outreach that I definitely wanted to go into is the coffee. You just sent me an example of it, and we'll put it
Yeah.
up on the screen as well. Can you just break it down? Why, how you first started doing it, why it works so well, and some of the stats you mentioned as well around it?
I mean, I'm Italian, so I'm a natural raging coffee addict. I honestly think I've probably been drinking coffee since I was 4. Realistically, that's how I remember having little espresso plastic cups when I was little, and my granddad used to give me a little swig. Um, who doesn't love a sit down on a coffee? And I call it a virtual coffee, so I don't send a virtual actual money coffee voucher. So
Yeah.
before anyone starts going to my DMs, can I have a coffee? It's you make one, I'll make one. We'll sit down together, 10 minutes. I'll basically instead of it's like another way of a phone call,
Mm.
but a nice face to face one. I think when you have 10 minutes face to face compared to a phone call, you can get more out of somebody because you can also see their face, and sometimes words can come across the wrong way,
Mm.
and an email sometimes can be read wrongly, especially if somebody's just had a really crappy meeting or a crappy phone call, and then they read that email and they're like, "Oh, do one." Like,
Yeah.
Teams call slightly different, so yeah, it was more of a different approach, and it's actually worked really well.
Yeah. I can see why it has. Do you send that to a lot of people, or like, what's sort of your outreach for that? Is that one of your first touch points when you're doing more of the cold stuff?
Yeah, so I'll either go on. I've got Sales Nav. Yeah, Sales Nav.
Yeah.
So I will actually list down like my actual ICP. My ICP are CEOs of recruitment companies, or ideally the CFOs. But if there isn't one, CFOs, financial director, sales manager. So I'm always kind of at the top. So I will realistically send it to them. I'm not going to, and everyone that adds me on LinkedIn or connects with me, I don't send it straight away because that's a bit creepy. But I'll a few days
Yeah.
later I'll be like, thanks for connecting. Here's a virtual chat. Let's get to know one another for 10 minutes. And people either use it as an excuse to get to know somebody, but also take 10 minutes out of their time. But yeah, it does weirdly work very well. And everyone that I've spoken to, I mean, someone was like, I don't drink coffee. So I cropped a Twinings English breakfast tea and I put it onto the cup instead. And I was like, how about a brew? And they were like, fair play, Olivia, go on then.
Yeah. I love that. So yeah, you won me over with that one.
One person responded and said, "I'm boycotting Starbucks. No, thank you." I was like, "Water? Virtual water? Are you thirsty?"
Just anything.
So that one was a hard no. I mean, like people don't respond to all of them, but I mean, I've gained, like I said, triple the amount of following. So
Yeah.
that's like 3,000 people. I've got enough people to send them out to.
You mentioned you sales and have quite a bit. Is there any? Do you do much of like the intent signals when you're looking for people to reach out to for Konquest? Like, is there any signals that are particularly interesting in terms of growth, or if it's a new hire or anything? Is there like a flow you have around that?
Yes, I mean, don't get me wrong. I get the odd message myself where they're like, "Oh, I've seen Conquest grow. Pleasure to work with you." Of course, obviously they're all AI generated, and I'm
Yeah,
like, this comes across so fake. So it's more
yeah.
of the case of if I'm on the phone to somebody as a cold call, I'll be like, "Oh, I actually saw that you've just introduced Richard. Do you reckon that would be the best person to speak to?" And they go, "Actually, yeah, it is. This is his details," and so on. So yes, I'm not that person that will see something on LinkedIn straight away and then add to their influx of emails that just people are just going to scan through because they just know it's not genuine. Um, but I will take note of it. I always do look on LinkedIn first to see if there's anything that I can like resonate a conversation with. Um, Especially if there's like a mutual interest, could be cooking, kayaking, anything like that. Which is, I think, a warm, open conversation. But if not, I just call them. Um, on my cold calls, a little bit different as well. I literally will ring you and just say like, "Look, I know you weren't expecting this phone call, but I want to run something by you to see if it's even relevant. If it's not, I promise I won't call you again." And you'll be
Mm,
surprised that people will just go, "Do you know what? For the sake of it, yeah. What is it?" And then they go, "It is relevant," or "No, it's not relevant. But actually, can you reach out to me in 6 months' time?" And I'm like, "Yeah, that's fine." And then set a follow up, and then those are the conversations I've had. Like I was speaking to people in October. We're now sort of signing, doing deals with them now because I'm happy to wait. It's more, I don't want to, I'm not a hungry,
rush it. Yeah.
yeah, because sometimes you push too much, people will just push back.
So, say someone says come back in 6 months. Are you doing much sort of like outreach in that gap? Are you sending them anything through, or are you like really just
Yeah,
keeping it till then?
yeah. So especially like the census, which is really really good because you can compare it against how other companies are operating at the minute. It's really good for insight. Um, I've sent that to everybody, every connection that I've had conversations with, and just said, I know we're reaching out and then, however, this could be quite useful for you to have a look at in the meantime. Um, and just touch points because you'll be surprised as much as somebody says 6 months, people do come to you earlier and say, look, can
Sure.
you speak then? And I've always got the door open. I've said, look, if you want to reach out, you have any questions in the meantime, and I'll get an email to say, hi, Olivia, just got a question on this. What do you suggest? This is what we say back. Perfect. I know we're speaking in 3 months' time. Look forward to you then. I'm not going to be like, you told me 6 months, babes. Talk to you then. I'm going to be like, yeah, it's fine.
Of course, yeah. Amazing. Well, we're coming up to the 30-minute mark, which is probably a good time to wrap things up. Always ask the same question, which is there anyone that on LinkedIn you really like the content at the moment that you think people should give a follow that is providing some really helpful insights that you're finding useful
Um, God, it's quite a few actually.
on the spot?
I mean, I would say Henry, but you've already spoken to him. Um, there's a girl called Dale. I will send you over her LinkedIn. She's brilliant. She's a farmer turned BDR. I love the fact she's got some
Amazing.
sheep and some cows, and I'm like amazing. I really want that. So anything to do with farm related, I'm there. There is somebody called Dom who works for Trellis in New York. I actually won his cold calling. He did a
Oh,
cold
amazing.
calling thing, and I actually won that. He's brilliant, especially when it comes to feedback. Like he posts every day, really good, useful information that can help with SDRs, especially new SDRs. Really great at giving you feedback as well. So I'll send over those to you.
Amazing. Well, thank you for your time, Olivia. There's some really helpful stuff in there, which I'm sure people will find useful.
Hopefully, if not, I still post anyway.
Yeah.